If you've seen some of my previous videos, then you know that besides Vader, Darth Bane is my all-time favorite Sith, and I do plan on making an extensive video covering Bane's life and history, but for this one I wanted to focus on a key point in Bane's life, that being, well, the end of his life. Or the possible end of his life, and his battle with his apprentice Darth Zannah over the title of Master and the Sith who would continue the rule of two. Before we get into the actual battle between the two, there is a little bit of backstory that will hopefully help you understand the events leading up to this, so I hope you enjoy this brief history lesson. Bane trained his apprentice for quite some time as she learned the ways of the Force and the dark side. However, Zannah would begin to get older, and even though she was still a young woman, Bane would begin to become disappointed that she had not yet challenged him for the title of Master. Because of this, Bane believed that she had either become content in remaining an apprentice or that she had planned to wait until Bane was an old man and would be easier for her to kill. Disappointed in Zannah, Bane would begin to search for a new apprentice. There was a problem though, as training a new apprentice would of course take time, and Bane was growing older, and even worse, he was actually aging more rapidly due to his consistent use of the dark side as well as injuries he had previously sustained. Bane recalled something that he had read once, that being that the Sith Lord Darth Zannah had supposedly somehow managed to live for centuries. Bane set out to discover how this was possible. To make a bit of a long story shorter, Bane would eventually come to possess the holocron of Darth Zannah, and from it, learned Zannah's secret, the art of essence transfer. I'm going to skip over some of the events that transpired next, as I mainly wanted this video to focus on the final battle between Zannah and Bane, but I will say that unbeknownst to Bane, one of the reasons that Zannah was waiting to challenge her master is that she wished to find her own apprentice before she overthrew Bane, only to become master herself. Zannah and Bane would both have an encounter with a female Iktachi assassin, referred to as the Huntress, who had the ability to perceive future events. Because of this cognitive ability, Bane would bestow upon her the title of Darth Cognus. The stars finally began to align, and while on the world of Ambria, which held significance to both Bane and his apprentice, Bane sent Zannah a message to meet him there as the two prepared for their long-awaited battle. I should mention that at this point in time, the Orbalisk armor had now been removed from Bane, which we do have a video all about, which I'll link below if you want to hear about it. While it would have been extremely difficult, if not next to impossible, for Zannah to defeat Bane while he had the impenetrable armor covering nearly his entire body, perhaps now that it was gone, Zannah stood a chance. Zannah arrived to Ambria to greet her master. The newly christened Darth Cognus was also there, ready to accept her destiny as being the apprentice to whichever Sith came out on top in this battle of will. Even though Zannah had expected Bane to come at her aggressively, she was still caught off guard at the ferocity of his attack. He began with a series of overhead chops, which she managed to block, though it sent her stumbling back. Zannah managed to recover, and the fight raged on. Zannah, of course being much smaller in stature than the massive Darth Bane, had to rely on her defensive maneuvers to stay alive and in the fight. Zannah knew it was highly unlikely she could defeat her master in a lightsaber duel. However, as we talked about in a previous video, she was highly skilled in the art of Sith sorcery. Zannah was biding her time, allowing Bane to believe he was in complete control, while in reality, she knew she was mere moments away from infiltrating his mind and ripping it apart. Finally, Zannah reached out into the dark side of the Force and touched the mind of Bane. Bane sensed the attack and attempted to brace himself. He had encouraged Zannah's practice of Sith sorcery long ago, even though he knew she may one day use it against him. In his mind, if he couldn't overcome it and defeat his apprentice, then he wasn't worthy to be master of the Sith in the first place. Zannah's attack began as a sharp pain in Bane's skull, described as feeling like a hot knife stabbing directly into his brain. Finally, nightmares and horrors buried deep within Bane's subconscious were brought to the surface. Bane let out a deafening scream and dropped to his knees as he looked up to the sky, only to see a swarm of flying horrors. The creature's wings were torn and rigged, with skin hanging from exposed bones. Their features were inhuman, and their eyes blazed like fire. Bane knew these apparitions weren't real, but he swung his lightsaber wildly as they swooped down upon him. Bane let out a primal scream and turned his terror into pure rage as he reached out with a dark side. This burst of energy obliterated the flying terrors. Zannah didn't let up. She caught upon the ground and soil beneath her, and dark-side, snake-like tendrils began crawling about the ground of Ambria towards Bane. He attempted to land a final blow on his apprentice with his saber. However, it was intercepted by one of the tendrils, which wrapped itself around Bane's elbow. In an instant, his arm was gone. The pain was so intense that it left Bane mute as he fell to the ground. Bane didn't have much left. Zannah was brutalized by the duel as well, and she lay near her master, who reached out with his still good arm and clutched her wrist. He had one option left to defeat her. He reached out with the Force and invoked the ritual of essence transfer. Using the methods he learned from Darth Anderu's holocron, he tapped into the dark side and seized its power. The darkness which had begun to swallow Bane up had been replaced by an intense crimson light. He was no longer part of his own body. He could see with Zannah's eyes, hear with her ears, but Zannah was still present herself. She screamed, and Bane could feel the terror and confusion in her. He screamed alongside her. She fought with all of her strength to repel the invader of her mind. Their previous physical battle became a pure battle of wills, their two identities linked together inside of Zannah's mind, fighting for possession of her body. For a long moment, the two were seemingly evenly matched, until suddenly, it was over. Darth Cognis had watched this battle take place. Once it was over, she saw the body of Darth Bane reduced to a pile of ash. The young blonde woman lay beside him. Cognis somehow felt the energy of Bane around her until it vanished. So if we end the story there, it seems pretty straightforward. Zannah gained the upper hand and defeated her master, who was trying to infiltrate her mind, and she managed to come out on top. However, let's read a little further. Zannah struggled to get to her feet. She shifted awkwardly and seemed confused, as if she was unfamiliar with how her own limbs worked, though this could simply be an effect of exhaustion from the intense battle. Zannah shook her head from side to side, which seemed to restore her equilibrium. She turned to face the Akatachi woman who kneeled before her new master. "I am Darth Cognis," she said. "Bane had me take the name to symbolize my new life as a Sith apprentice." "Then your training has already begun," Zannah replied. As Zannah spoke, Darth Cognis couldn't help but notice that she was continually clenching and unclenching the fingers of her left hand, the same hand that Darth Bane had lost moments earlier. And with that, it brings us to the end of my all-time favorite Star Wars books. Clearly intentionally left a bit ambiguous. Did Darth Bane actually manage to defeat Zannah, infiltrating her mind and living on through her to train new generations of Sith? Is that why Zannah seemed disoriented in her own body, while she was clenching the fingers of the same hand her master Bane had just lost? Or was all of this simply an effect of the brutal battle she and Bane had just endured? I choose to believe that Zannah did in fact defeat her master and was just disoriented after the traumatic experience, though perhaps there was simply a small piece of Bane that lived on through her. But hey, you can decide for yourself. Zannah would go on to train her new apprentice in Darth Cognis as they would continue the era of the Rule of Two. But I would love to know what you think. If you're familiar with this story and have thoughts, please share them in the comments below. Do you believe that Bane actually intercepted the mind of Zannah and now lives in her, or did she defeat her master once and for all? I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, may the Force be with you.